Hello and welcome to the Watchdog Wire Weekly Report. It is Saturday, October 18th at 9:02 a.m. And I went back. I looked a little bit earlier before the call at all the things I reported on this week. So there's a lot. Eastgate Mall, couple things with Ohio State University, couple things with the Ohio Election Commission, things on Batavia Village and Batavia Township. Uh, 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 Review of the vape shop in Batavia Village, something on the animal shelter, the Clermont GOP meeting, the FOP Lodge 112, Aaron Haslam and Milford Wrestling, and a few other things. So there were a lot of things, and they went in a lot of different directions. So I'm going to focus in on just a few things today that I think are important to focus upon relating to the reporting that I did last week. Then we'll talk about what my example of the week of how bad the Clermont Sun is. Then I'll talk about some of the things in the upcoming week. So I really was like, I don't know what order to cover these things in, and some of them are not local. And so let's get into it. So here's the things that I wanted to kind of pinpoint on is Ohio State. Now, Ohio State is something where I have had a couple reports. It's not a per se a top priority for me to cover, but I think that ultimately, I can have an impact on this because and this will kind of blow up at some point. So what Ohio State does is they don't sell all of the tickets to their big events like football and basketball to the general public at face value. They are the ones providing the tickets directly to ticket scalpers. Specifically, they have a relationship with somebody called Tickets for Less. And that entity then basically manages the distribution of those tickets to maximize the amount of money they can get off of them. It's sort of like the pharmacy that sells legal drugs decided they could make some more money if they sold them illegally behind the shop. I think it's unethical, it's immoral, and I believe it's illegal because the Board of Regents of the university statutorily is who provides sets the price for tickets. And so when the athletic department is effectively going around them and selling the tickets for a much higher price through a broker, it's wrong. But so this is part of the report on this. And hold on, let me
face value that have never been sold to the public. Be proud of it. Tell everybody how you're making more money for the school. That's an office. If I go,
so if you have if you're selling tickets for more than face value and ripping off your loyal fans, be proud of that. Advertise it. Tell your loyal fans how good you're doing at selling tickets at higher than the face value that you tell the public you're selling them for. So that was Ohio State, and I think that'll be like a slow burn, but eventually I think that'll blow up because it's wrong, it's unethical, and I think it shocks the sensibility. And my understanding is other public universities that have been caught doing this, that in many cases, when they get caught and it eventually gets into the public psyche, they have to stop the practice because it is immoral and unethical that they tell you that there's a price per ticket, but then they are the ones actually selling the tickets for more than that price. Okay, so I had a whole bunch of reporting on the Ohio Election Commission. Again, not totally local, but it ties to local candidates like Alan Freeman. Alan Freeman and Gene Schmidt were Larry Householder bribe candidates. Frankly, they should both be in jail. I'm being totally honest. These people all knew exactly what they were doing, but they are protected because they're part of the blessed class. And anybody who doesn't know, what happened with Larry Householder was not new. It was not even unique. It happens all the time. The insider candidates get support that never gets reported anywhere, and to make sure that the insider candidates win, the chosen candidates win. Now, Alan Freeman, people joke like Alan Freeman's such a bad candidate that he couldn't even win when he was an insider candidate supported by millions of dollars of bribe money. But what I did at the Ohio Election Commission was three things. And I'm going to do these out of order here. One is I won a case against the Ohio Election Commission that they cannot give out fines in what's called a preliminary review stage. What they typically do is, without giving anybody any opportunity for due process to face their accuser, to call witnesses, they just find them guilty and give them fines. And it's all the little people, $50, $100, school board candidates, the little people, not the big people like Alan Freeman, who get fined 50,000 and then never pay. And so it's totally wrong too. But they're proceeding with the practice. They're just ignoring the lawsuit. They're ignoring that I won. They are appealing, but they just, they're going out of business at the end of the year, and then it's going to be even worse than having them. There'll be no accountability as far as well, the funny part is the Secretary of State will take over, and God bless them. I'll have fun with that when they take over. The Secretary of State's office largely takes over campaign finance enforcement and takes away from the Ohio Election Commission. But let's just play the little beginning of this here.
You can just ignore the court as it stands right now and issue fines from preliminary reviews when the court has said you cannot do that.
Yes.
It's specifically in the court ruling.
Yes.
So you're just ignoring it.
And if that's the way you want to phrase it, those are your
Well, how
words,
should
not
I
mine.
phrase it?
I'm not telling you how to phrase your.
Well, you're the director. How should I phrase
I'm
that you're
telling you
ignoring
how
a
to
court?
phrase.
So Phil Richter's job over the years has been to protect the insider class. So the insider class largely gets protected. But if you get targeted like Joe Blystone, Joe Blystone had screwed up campaign finance reporting and should have had a fine, should have had all this. But had he been an insider candidate, nothing would have happened to Joe Blystone. He would have. So they'd use it to target political opponents to the establishment. And the only reason I was so successful with the Ohio Election Commission, I think I was like 7-1 in cases that I brought. The only reason I was so successful was because I pin them down so hard that they had to do something. So I'm just good at grinding it out and pinning them down and getting it to a point where there really can't be any argument that the person has to have some sort of fine or imposition on them. Okay. So the other thing I did with the Ohio Election Commission is there's a slime ball, and I say slime ball is a basis of fact and experience, not as it's a true statement. Brian Katz, this is Brian Katz. Brian Katz is supposed to be the person who is the election integrity person for LaRose, but he is a slime ball, a absolute slime ball. And so he gave, if you're somebody like you or me, Brian Katz he'll do as instructed in terms of get you or not get you. But if it's somebody like Gene Schmidt, which is the case that I bring up, he was giving her personal campaign finance advice on the weekends when the Secretary of State's office, you try to get campaign finance advice from them, they're going to tell you they can't get engaged with any candidate. But not true for the insider class. And Brian Katz is just a slime. And what I tried to ask him about at this thing is he tries to evade. He's a good hider, burrowing into the ground like a rodent. And so he won't answer, and his office won't answer for how do you get candidates that are found to have inaccurate, incomplete finance reports by the Ohio Election Commission to correct those reports? Alan Freeman would be one of those candidates. And I'll tell you what, they don't do anything because they don't want to find, because if they make him correct, like if Alan Freeman corrected his finance report, he would be admitting to receiving corporate contributions, which would be equivalent to a felony. So they protect him. Okay. And that's the way Brian Katz is. If you go watch this report, the big thing too is what a slime he is to evade. Go talk to so-and-so, so on and so forth. So he is just like I don't know. The guy is just such a slime. So I like Glenn Greenwald, by the way. When people go like, "Oh, you're name calling," I like Glenn Greenwald, the reporter who is a liberal, but he broke the Snowden case. He's super well known. If you've never heard of him, you need to get more into news, okay? Because he's broken a lot of big things. He's really been a defender of civil liberties. And Glenn Greenwald, he got asked a question about as a reporter, because he would refer to people as, say, unethical or crooks or this kind of stuff. And they would say, like, isn't that name calling? And he would say, if I, as a reporter, have come to a conclusion based on my actual research work and analysis, then I'm going to tell you that conclusion. And that's what I'm going to do. And, Glenn Greenwald actually says a lot of reporters, hide what they actually view. And that's what's bad about the press. That's what's bad about the press. By the way, what's on the screen now is I have been pounding on this issue with Katz since May of 2025. And I actually have video. I have all the receipts. This is the first time I've done a story on it, but there's a lot of little things that I dig into, and I have the video in the background that I'm not yet reporting on, but I will at some point. And Brian Katz, the slime he should just answer questions. I mean, it's not that hard. He says, my questions are biased. What's biased about a question about what's your process to follow up? Oh, I have here, by the way, let's do this. I know I might run a few minutes long here, but I have Brian Kindle's number, and he's the campaign finance guy. He's never gotten back to me. I was told to go to this guy to get information because Brian Katz couldn't answer any question. And what I'm going to do is, hey, what the hell? Let's call him right now. Let's call him live. I don't know if this is a mobile number, but it's weird. It's not a local. Apparently, he's had his phone disconnected. So hold on. I'm going to try this again. Okay, so I'm sorry. I'm going long here, but let's look and see. Just make sure I got it right here. But this would be great that the press relations guy for the Secretary of State's office had his phone disconnected. His phone line disconnected. Here, I'm not going to mess with this too much, but there is a time in this when his number appears on the screen in this story. This is the wrong story. Well, I'll come back and try it again. Maybe at the end, if you want to hang on the end, we'll try to call Ben Kindle again and see if his actual number works or not anymore. But I think I dialed it. If I dialed it correctly, it's disconnected now. Okay. All right. So let's move on. And the third thing is there's a bunch of Aaron Haslam updates, and I put out Aaron Haslam videos. Isn't it amazing how much effort people go to protect Aaron Haslam from speaking in public about his love of his efficiency apartment and that's his real address? So it's amazing. It's amazing how much the Board of Elections and the political elite in Adams County will work so hard to make Aaron Haslam not have to speak on his own address, and which would obviously convince us all that he's telling the truth, right? Because I'm sure he's very compelling that this is his real address and it's not a sham address. So if you really have been under a rock and aren't familiar with what I've been covering about this, is Aaron Haslam has a fake address in Adams County just so he can be prosecutor. The funny thing is, until August 28th, that in theory was also David Kelly, the ex-prosecutor's address. They bunked together in that little efficiency apartment back there. What's funny is David Kelly was bunking there even when he was registered to vote in 2 states, in Arizona and Ohio, because the laws don't apply. If you're a prosecutor, a lot of times the laws don't apply to you, and it's disgusting to me. I'm not taking anything away. If you're a little guy like you or me and you do something wrong and you're held accountable, so be it. But these people in the elite class, they are so full of shit, and they have lived by a completely different set of rules. And here's Aaron Haslam. So he has there's a special meeting, I think, on Monday at 5:30 at the Adams County Board of Elections on his fake address, where they're still trying to cover for him. And then there is also, I filed a private citizen affidavit on him not having a county sticker on his plate, which is another absurdity. The prosecutor just openly violates the law relating to license plates on his car. And the funny part is he used to have a Hamilton County sticker on that white truck, and he ripped it off. Apparently, I got a picture from somebody that he had used that truck in a campaign parade and got razzed for having a Hamilton County car in an Adams County parade. These people are such phonies. It's unbelievable. So, and the beauty is that I love that Adams County elected officials are so into Aaron Haslam that they will protect him so that I can spend more and more time in Adams County, and hopefully I'll find some other political corruption. It doesn't seem like it'd be hard. I don't know why Aaron Haslam is worth it. But that's the gist of what's going on with Aaron Haslam, and just an update on Aaron Haslam. So, okay, now let's go unethical FOP Lodge 112. So this is in Union Township, Clermont County, where I live. There's an FOP lodge called the 112. They are police. And I want to say that again. And I hope people from 112 are listening. And DiPuccio, the head of this thing, is listening. You are unethical police. And we expect more from you than to be unethical. Here's what they do. They basically endorse political candidates as blessed by the police without just totally political swamp, totally swamp. I don't even think they really have any process whatsoever. But they exclude whatever they do. They only allow one competitor. It's like they're communists. I think DiPuccio is a communist probably because they have endorsements where they only let one candidate participate in their endorsement process. Let's think about that. They have endorsements where only one candidate is allowed to. It's like a communist ballot. Even the communists don't do that, by the way. If you go to Russia or someplace, I've been to Russia a lot. Back I haven't been in the Soviet Union era, but even in the Soviet Union era, there were like fake second parties, so there were more than one name on the ballot. So so they could claim, oh no, this is democracy. They don't even do that at the FOP Lodge 112. Your ballot only has one name. And they endorsed recently Greg Gentile, who is cousin of Michael Logue, handpicked successor to sketchy auditor Linda Fraley, who has no experience, like literally no experience. And so these cops, and if you are in this lodge, you should be ashamed. And DiPuccio is not a man enough to talk to me. He's never been a man enough to talk to me. He used to work court security. I haven't seen him in a while. He used to work the security counter at the Common Police Court, but I don't know if he does that anymore. I don't know if I could pick him out of a lineup actually, but he used to work there. And my understanding from talking to people in law enforcement is they put him there because he was kind of a nothing burger. So that was a safe place to put him. But he's like the union head. And I've challenged any member of the union leadership of there's 9 people on a board to do an interview with me to justify their process. And I think I'm going to do more and more reporting on this because this is dirty cop behavior and we expect more from it. And the cops in this, I have a deep respect for law enforcement. And I think the law enforcement that's the good law enforcement is not helped by people like DiPuccio and these rigged endorsement things coming out of this Lodge 112. To be honest, it seems like the lodge is controlled by Linda Fraley and Michael Logue. Whoever they say to endorse, that's who gets endorsed from this lodge. There's no process, no questionnaire, no ethics, no morality, no fairness, and those are bad cops. It's kind of like the Signal 99 thing. I know Signal 99 breaks some interesting stories now and then, but it's actually law enforcement, I believe, behind Signal 99. So they're faking like there's some sort of public group that is supportive when it's really a group that is doing their own bidding. Like that's why Signal 99 defended Jim Young, the slime former chief of Batavia Village. All right. So I'm going to go on to the next thing, which is the Milford Wrestling. I just published a story last night about this Milford Wrestling update. A couple things is I'm still trying to get the Tony Brothers interview set. I'm going to continue to take Mr. Brothers at face value that he's going to do this. We should have done it weeks ago already, but he was waiting for more records. The majority of those records have been produced to him by Milford Schools, and hopefully he will do an interview soon. But the other part is the Babineck. So Jason Babineck is who the allegations were against originally from Courtney Wells. The allegation being that Jason Babineck was in possession of and circulated inappropriate pictures of one or more women on the wrestling team. And so that's the allegation. And by the way, I'm reporting an allegation that is in public records. It's not like I'm inventing something out of the thin air or I'm making something up. I'm just reporting, and I'm reporting them as allegations. Well, Jason Babineck, the filed a protection order against Courtney Walls, basically on, I guess, the premise that largely Courtney Walls had done an interview with me, and somehow that's a basis for a protection order, and that Courtney Walls had picked up carryout food from the restaurant where his daughter works, where Jason Babinek's daughter works. And so, but then I tried to go to a hearing, a public court hearing, and it turned out the hearing apparently happened before the scheduled time. You see the video right here. And so the hearing had already taken place. And so I was just down in the bottom of the courthouse. I didn't even have time to go upstairs. And when he walked by, as I said, Jason Babinek. And as a result, now I got a protection order against me. I don't have, they was denied. Okay. But they filed a protection order against me because I guess me doing news reporting is, now we're going to try to use protection orders to prevent news reporting of things in public records. And that a reporter tried to ask a question to a person who has allegations against them. This whole area, and I might go and I want to go and listen to a bunch of these protection order hearings or something. You can; they're public hearings. You get the audio from them. I did. This process is abused, and I don't want to take anything away from protection orders. They're very important, but they get abused by people like the Babineks that are using them as a way to go after people that they don't like, for that there's no legitimate basis for a protection order, and then have a one-sided narrative. Because what happens in a protection order is if you file it, they have a hearing where you're the only person there, and it's called an ex parte. Only one side's represented, and you get to give your narrative. And if you can convince the judge or the magistrate, they'll give you a temporary protection order without the other side having been able to even address it. And then there'll be a full hearing. So that process is a good process, because there's times if it was a real threat, somebody's threatening to kill me, I'm getting beat by my boyfriend or what have you, girlfriend, what have you, that's very legit, very legit. Somebody's, stalking outside my house all day and night, that kind of thing. But what happens is these people use these, as I referred, as the poor man's way to get somebody in court. And the funny part is, I think that even people that have done this, like Bill Thomas, recognize the validity of what I'm saying at this point, is that this is getting abused. And, it takes big people to realize that maybe even they've done it, tried to do this, and that it's not really so appropriate use. So the reason you would go get a protection order, would you go try to do it yourself, and you fill out a form. You can watch other things I've said in this, like write out your statement, type it out. Don't go in and write it by hand and look like an idiot. But there's only two legit reasons. One is that you are in actual real threat, legitimate threat of physical violence. Okay. That's one. Okay. And everybody would get that. Okay. Two is that somebody is doing something to you that is causing you to become kind of mentally impaired, so that you can't, work. Once again, my picture is frozen up. I'm going to do something real quick here and see if I can get it to fix itself, but I'm going to go offline just for a second. Okay, so hopefully you can hear me, and let's see if this comes back online. I'm trying to figure out why it did this. And maybe okay, there we go. All right, I got it fixed. So sorry for that little pause there, but I got it fixed. At least for now. I got to figure out why I did it, because it locked up last week too, and normally that's never happened. So anyway, the protection orders, they get abused. And but the mental impairment part of it would be like serious things, like that you can't go to work. You have to go seek out a psychiatrist. I'm not sure, if the Babinek daughter can't go to work because somebody came in and picked up a carryout order, then she should probably seek an office job. But listen, you can listen to the whole audios of both of the protection order hearings, the one for me, and they were both ex parte, and the one for Courtney Walls. And it's just amazing, the sob story narratives I think people tell. And I'm going to go try to investigate this more in things that don't involve me or somebody that I interviewed of these protection orders, because I think that I just think it's abused. And I love the way that, for example, go listen when way the magistrate was on the one against Courtney Walls that I thought was not a good magistrate. The one on mine was better and explained the process much better. But it's like Mr. Babinek, Jason Babinek's, he showed up at the workplace of my daughter, da, 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 without ever clarifying until the magistrate asked something, that the workplace is a restaurant and the guy had ordered carryout food. So it's very different. Obviously, let's say somebody worked in an office, like she was a dental assistant in an office somewhere, and the person that's not having a legitimate appointment shows up, or worked in a regular office and was, went out in the parking lot, versus what's the reality? The guy had carryout food from the place. Now, am I saying that Courtney Walls didn't do something wrong or something during that, picking up the carryout order? I don't know. Maybe he did. I don't know. But it wasn't something that, they had to call the police or, I just don't get it. If I were trying to get a protection order against somebody, which I've never done, I think I would have my facts. I'd get the surveillance video from the restaurant showing him coming in and acting in a crazy or bizarre manner, but they didn't do that. Okay. And I think it's because it's just a way to try to chill expression. And so the Babineks, I'm not making personal towards them, but people try to use protection orders or inappropriate use to chill speech. And, they want to chill that Courtney Walls did an interview with me. I guess they want to chill me covering the story, and it's not going to work. And, and they can act accordingly. And so it's so funny. It's so funny how many people, they're the ones that create the news stories. Okay. Last couple things here before I get to the Clermont Sun. I did two things on Batavia. I did several things on Batavia. One was and I'm actually proud of this. I like Ken Geis, and I always have said that. And I think he's actually, compared to I'm not saying he's like a saint. I'm just saying compared to the political people like Linda Fraley and stuff like that, this guy's 1,000 times more ethical, honest, moral, and he's super smart. He has the benefit of being super smart. So he and I did a thing that I requested on the 5 key pillars to a vibrant, successful community. And we actually did a tour in Union Township where he's responsible for even the stuff that goes on now that's positive. He's still responsible for, because it's vapor trails of him being the administrator in Union Township. And then we do the same thing in Batavia. So I'm actually very proud of that. I think people should understand that there's a lot of Tanya Hardings in Clermont County government and politics, which is if somebody's actually competent and capable, they try to kneecap them because they can't do it. Like David Painter can't do shit. David Painter is a blowhard, for example. And so he and people aligned to David Painter were trying to kneecap somebody like Ken Geis, because Ken Geis can actually do things, do amazing things. Okay. All right. So the other thing I did was a thing on William Albright. And William Albright is, the mascot of Batavia Village, I guess. And he's a great example of how people embrace useful idiots for their causes that are completely mental cases. And I want to be very clear on the record. There is something mentally wrong with this guy. He just menaces people in the streets. But I guess some people think it's cool because he's parroting their points. So let me play just the very beginning of this.
Oh, can suck a dick. How you like that? You don't like it? Walk the fuck away.
Why do you act like you
walk the fuck? I'd love to fucking take a walk back here with you. I want to hit you so bad.
I don't have to be with anybody.
So that's called menacing, that you threaten to hit me all the time.
You
seem to have a lot of rage. You have to.
I do got a lot of rage.
Last night on October.
Okay, so that just gives you a flavor of this guy. He does this to families. He does it to, I'm all for, like, press engagement of people. I'm all for putting a microphone in somebody's face, but walking up to them, flipping them off, cussing them out, spitting on them because you're not consciously spitting. You never consciously spit on me, but you're so close. Like, you're literally, I wish I had video of these. He's like literally like this, cussing me. He's just a mental case. And the people that, it says there's always going to be mental cases, right? But the people that embrace him because he is doing their bidding, they're worse mental cases. Think about that for a second. They're worse mental cases because they know the guy's a mental case. All right. But they like the bully goofball. And, by the way, him and Joe Pat Fisher, both are big blowhards. I don't think Joe Pat Fisher, I don't think I've ever met Joe Pat Fisher in person. But, I don't think Joe Pat Fisher is as mentally unstable as Albright. But I've asked both of them to do an interview about their views. You can watch that whole report and you can see how Albright responds. But you can also, Joe Pat Fisher, let's do it. Let's have an interview. Like, why are these people so afraid of talking to little old Chris Hicks? They all claim I'm an idiot and I'm a moron and I know what I'm talking about. Well, why are they so afraid to talk to me? I also offered to them that if they'll do an interview on Batavia Village, that I will let them ask me or interview me on anything they want to interview me on. Anything. Open book, and they won't take me up on that when they claim they have all this, that I'm a evil person or what have you. All right, let's go real quick here to the dumbest Clermont Sun story. And it's hard to pick one. I realized this picking one. Hold on, I was actually looking at the sports section that Jake Dowling does, and it's actually very good. He does a great job. The Megan Alley, terrible job. So here is the, now we're October 18th, early voting already started. They had, I think, 3 candidates, it's random. And so this is their election update. And then they have just like a few random candidates. So let's look. One, let's see if I can add these up. William Shula, 1. Mary Shunis, whatever, 2. Yeah, so they have like a couple candidates here. Whoa, that's too small. Okay, here, let's see. 1. How many actual candidates are there here? There's only 2. Okay, because I see this Melanie Shows down here. So 2 as a huge election coverage, we're up to 5 candidates. If they had any competence at this newspaper, they would have things like, how about the 2 municipal court judges? How about profiles of them side by side? How about the mental health levy? How about a pros and cons? Get somebody to write the pro and con of the mental health levy. How about taking school boards and having, if people that responded and didn't in a matrix, okay? This is just so dumb. The Clermont Sun just puts crap, literally crap, onto their pages to fill the pages, okay? And other than Jake Dowling, the sports part is, I think, excellent. I mean, I think this guy just does a superstar job and should get out of this operation because he could make way more money and have way more impact outside of being held back by champion media, which is, by the way, these are the same people that do the People's Defender in Adams County who won't report on the Aaron Haslam story. You have to remember these stink newspapers, and especially Scott Champion's newspapers, they're actually just propaganda vehicles for the government. Because they rely on press release stories. They rely on the government feeding them content. So when you look at this paper on a day in, day out basis, you're going to see that, like here, paying military honors submitted by disabled American veterans. Like half of all the content is just submitted stuff from the government. One of the biggest jokes here is that Mark DeColvey and the sheriff in Clermont County write their own news stories for the paper. That's real journalism, isn't it? That's Pravda. The funny part is you realize that we live in a world where a lot of our political officials are basically communists in the way they approach things. They don't want competitive primaries. They want to control the news. They don't want any other voices, and they want to have preferential treatment. Just as a quick aside, I know I'm out of time here, but, Jeff Corcoran, the former chair of the Clermont Republican Central Committee, had the great idea that there would be cards, Republican cards for committee members that merchants would give us a 10% discount. That shows you the mindset. Now that got blown up by people like me of the corruption of it all, but that's the mindset of some of these people. We should get a special treatment. They actually believe that's a good thing. It's basically, as I like to say, hold your ears, fucktarded. It's fucktarded. I'm trying to see on my computer here what's coming up. So, all right, I'm gonna wrap up with what's coming up. I have a couple Linda Fraley stories I hope they have out next week. I have a set of stories relating to the Clermont County Prosecutor Office and just unbelievable stuff that happened this week. I could say that I'm waiting to see if anybody apologizes to me, because what happened this week with the Clermont County Prosecutor's Office is inexcusable. They're totally messed up. It's just embarrassing. It is embarrassing. And one of the worst parts about it is that Mark Ticalvi is the person putting his staff in the position of additional inspection, because Mark Ticalvi doesn't have the balls to take a question. He doesn't have the balls to fix obvious things like have an updated, correct org chart online. He doesn't have the balls to take action equally and fairly. So, and if you work for Mark Ticalvi, I'd be embarrassed to work for this guy, frankly. And remember, he is the one putting you in the position where the press has additional focus on his office because of the way he behaves. So, and that is on him. And if he had any balls, which he does not, if he had any balls, he would come out from behind the locked, sealed door and do an open interview. Okay. Again, why is he afraid of an open interview with Chris Hicks? Why is he afraid of that? Okay. He's afraid of it, not because I'm wrong. He's afraid of it because he cannot handle fair questions. He can't handle fair questions. So, and then I'm going to really get into, I did with John Becker, but some more talk or trespass is really going to kick off. And then finally, the Adams County Board of Elections meeting is on Monday at 5:30. I'll head to that, even though I'm sure they're just going to go into executive session. I'm going to try to interview some board members in the parking lot, and we'll see how that goes. And I'm sure next week we'll explode with a bunch of other stuff. Every week I'm getting more and more stuff just comes up, and I try to get it the best I can. And I'm going to make one last statement here. If you try to contact me, and you want me to work on something, and I'm going to do a piece on this, but if you just leave me a message saying to call me, I'm probably not going to call you. If you tell me I should look into such and such police office department, I'm not just going to open it and go look into something. What I need, what I get, and people that are successful getting me to engage, and I want to help people, it's you got to give me something that has evidence. And I'd rather have a small thing that has clear evidence, like even Aaron Haslam doesn't have a county sticker on his plate, that then I can actually latch onto, and you have direct evidence of it, then I can take it from there, because then it tends to branch out. I need real things. So I apologize to people that I don't get back to, but I get a ton of people contacting me just saying to call me. I got something I want to tell you about. And I really don't, I don't want to be mean. I just don't have the time. I just can't. And then people want to talk for a half hour to an hour about something for which they have no direct evidence. I need evidence. So, if you have that, and I'd rather have a smaller thing that's the beginning that starts it out, the beginning, than some big broad thing about your constitutional this and all that kind of stuff. I don't mean to be going on. I know I'm running late here by doing it, but I feel bad when I don't get back to people, but I just don't have the bandwidth. I'm only one guy. But if you get me something, people know, you could go find the people that I respond super quickly to, because they give me something concrete that I can see it within a few minutes. I can look at what they sent me, and it's black and white of a problem I can act on, not some nebulous concept. So, all right. So that is the end of the Watchdog Wire report for October 18th. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful weekend.